Hello, hello, welcome. So I was on the internet on YouTube looking for something to watch, and I came across this trailer for this movie, Born a Champion. Never even heard of it, for good reason, as I came to realize after wasting 1.5 hours of my life. Um, so the movie follows this guy, as you can clearly see, some guy with a military background. He then goes back into society. He's a hero in the war, of course. Keep that in mind. He's a hero, military background, comes back home, uses his skills, jujitsu, to open up a dojo. Life is hard. He meets a girl. They have a kid. Now, the way he meets the girl is on a plane to Iraq, where he's been invited by the sheikh, right? One of the princes of these southern countries, right? Um, who wants his son to learn jujitsu. So he's training his son jujitsu. And he has friends in high places, which also harkens back to his time during the war. Interesting, whatever. But at the restaurant, after his training sessions with the kids, he sees the girl that he meets on the plane, and she's being harassed because she's there on a fashion shoot, but it's all shady because it's being hosted by a fur salesman, right? And this first salesman usually, this is how he recruits girls into his prostitution ring through this fashion boutique runway whatever thing, right? So he's trying to recruit this girl, and he saves her from that, right? And that's how they meet and get married. And when they finally connect, right? When they're back in America and they finally connect, it is the most corny scene, and it was setting up for the amount of sheer corniness that I was about to endure for 1.5 hours, right? I'll tell you about the scene. So in that scene, she's hiding behind some door in his office, and he's out there, and he doesn't know she's there, and he just starts talking about how much he loves this girl or whatever. She's behind there crying, and his friend goes back there because his friend knows she's there but doesn't tell him. So he goes back there and be like, "Oh, what's wrong? Are you okay?" And she says, "Oh, I've never had anybody express the exact same way that I'm feeling about them." It is so corny. It is really bad. It is really bad. So another strike. So first of all, he's a war hero. Next strike is just the overwrought, hyper melodramatic writing, dialogue writing, and just constantly trying to pull at your heartstrings. Right? Spoiler alert: I don't think you should watch this movie. Right? It's made with a love of jujitsu. It's people who clearly love jujitsu made this movie, but they clearly didn't love jujitsu enough to learn how to make a good movie about the thing they love. Right? So they get married. Spoilers. The girl ends up dying in a random accident, like a random ass accident, right? This shouldn't be a bad thing, but just because this movie has already set itself up as a cornball cringe fest, basically, that also falls flat and doesn't work. It's just another layer to make our hero, Kelly, that's the name of the guy, seem more downtrodden, which will further amplify his victory when that time comes. And you can completely see that that's what they're doing, which is why it doesn't work. It's so ham fisted, right? So she dies, and this is all building up to a climactic battle, which is going to have with this guy. And he already met with this guy. He's the one that did this to his face and injures his eye to the point where he's basically blind in that eye, right? So if he ever gets into a fight with a real competitor ever again, the potential of him losing his sight is a very big one. There's a very high, there's a high risk of that happening, right? So you know what's going to happen by the end of the movie. So he ends up having to fight, loses his wife, raising the kid by himself, and then an opportunity comes because a video surfaces of him kicking ass, right? Does this remind you of something? A certain movie that rhymes with Blurrier, starring Tom Hardy. So a video surfaces of him kicking ass, so people see that, oh my God, this guy is really good. Like he should be able to compete with this champion guy, right? So that's how the rematch is set up, so he can get revenge for the guy against the guy who basically nearly took his eyesight, right? So we have a war veteran, secret jujitsu master, loses his wife, barely making ends meet. He's also a bouncer, right, in a club. So the potential of him getting his ass kicked is always high. So he's always roughed up, and the girl is always complaining and always crying, and it's like, come on, you know who you married, and it just doesn't work because she just seems like a crazy person. She knows she married a fight. She knows she married a fighter, and his job is as a bouncer, right? Yet every time anything comes up, she's always crying. So it's just repetitive. It doesn't make her seem like a real character at all, you know. So you don't really miss her when she's gone, but he misses her, and you know. But anyway, an opportunity comes up where he can fight again, get revenge, and that happens. Dennis Quaid is in this movie, as you saw earlier on. We also find out just before he's about to go into that last fight, Dennis Quaid comes in and tells him, I wish I shook the hand of the man who saved my boy's life. Let me tell you a story about how my boy almost died or whatever. You know, this guy, he got shot, and then this guy stayed with him until the paramedics came and everything, and that guy was you, Kelly. So Kelly's a hero. Kelly's a hero jiu-jitsu fighter, lost his wife. He's basically jiu-jitsu Jesus Christ, right? So it's really bad. Then he goes into this fight, almost loses, of course. They make it as tense as possible, ends up losing his eyesight. So basically fights blinded and ends up winning anyway, right? Even though he's blind as hell. But okay, so some good things about this movie. This guy, something Flannery, I think his name is, the guy from Boondock Saints. He's one of the guys from Boondock Saints. He's okay, but more importantly, he's good in this role. Too bad the role is shite and it's just horribly written. But you can tell that he did the work. He's done the work. When he's doing the jujitsu moves, he looks good, right? So he's pretty well cast in this movie. And Dennis Quaid is full of charisma. So he's always great, but his role is kind of nebulous in this. You can just tell he's there for the star power. But everybody else in this movie, most of the other cast members are complete shite, especially the other MMA competitors he goes up against, you know, except for the ultimate bad guy. Everybody else looks horrible. And I think they know that because during certain scenes when he's fighting all these throwaway fighters, there's often dialogue of the people watching saying stuff like, that person who clearly doesn't look like an MMA fighter, they say stuff, oh my God, he looks tough. Can Kelly beat him? So you can tell, like, you know, they're using that to emphasize the fact that this guy's tough because he doesn't look physically tough. He doesn't look physically like an MMA fighter. You know, even this guy is fighting here. I don't know if this guy's an MMA fighter, but anyway, he's flabby. He doesn't really look like an MMA fighter, right? And this goes for a lot of the other cast members. So it falls short there as well. But I really like his, probably the best character in this movie is his best friend, a guy called Taco. That's what he's called, the Mexican guy called Taco. I don't know, right? Yeah. His best friend Taco is pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. That's the guy sitting beside his wife there. So he's pretty fun. I like it. That's him. I like his acting style, whatever. He's probably the best actor in the whole movie. But everybody else is really crap. So this movie is playing with a lot of good ideas, and I like the soul of the movie because I like martial arts. You know, I'm very interested in martial arts, and I like watching a good martial arts movie. And I really like jujitsu. I think jujitsu is the best martial arts because most fights end up on the ground. So I thought this was going to be like a really good jujitsu movie, right? A love letter to jujitsu. Emphasis on love letter because that comes back a big way at the end of the movie, and I'll talk about that later on. But it's not a good jujitsu movie at all. The jujitsu you do see, it's executed good. It's executed well, but it's not about technique or whatever. And it's definitely not warrior, right? It doesn't have the hype, the energy, the acting, the dialogue, the emotional power of warrior. It doesn't have that at all, at all. So it's really corny. It has a lot of heart. It has a lot of heart. Yeah. That's a saving grace. It's not a saving grace. Nothing saves this movie. It's still a shit movie. It's a waste of time, right? So the movie starts off with this, which was an interesting choice because they're trying to ground this movie. It's a period piece. It takes place during the genesis of MMA, which is an interesting concept. But the costume design and the sets are not indicative of a period piece. They're not indicative of that time. There's nothing that happens in this movie that tells you, oh, it's going on between 95, 81, and 2000. It all just looks the same, right? So at the beginning of the movie is documentary style, which is supposed to ground, frame the movie and ground the movie, right? Because that's what it does in Interstellar, right? It helps the audience immerse more, right? It removes one more layer of barrier of separation between the viewer and the story that's going on. If you make it seem like a documentary, right? That's why found footage movies mostly work. So that's how it starts with his friend. Guess his friend's name is Taco. Okay, his friend is telling the story about his boy Kelly, and I'm telling you, freaking Fajita never shuts up throughout this damn movie. He is always talking throughout this damn movie, which completely destroys the immersion. It makes the events of the movie seem really far away, like it's not immediate. The stakes aren't that high because somebody's telling you a story. And he's literally telling you a story like your dad or mom would be telling you a damn story and you're imagining, trying to imagine it in your head, right? That is what is happening, and it doesn't work because he keeps taking you out of the experience. So the movie just so many elements that ruin the movie, right? So there's that going for it. His friend Taco, really weird. Once again, so ham-fisted, so in your face. And Born a Champion, it should be more like born a corn dog, really, right? It's so corny. What else? I like the kid they used in the movie. He was fun. Like those scenes, I really liked his relationship with his kid. It was pretty charming. That was pretty cool. I liked the relationship with the family. That was, if they felt they had good chemistry. I felt, yeah. But I came here for jujitsu, and there isn't a lot of it. There isn't a lot of it. All there is everything I just talked about. So it's not a great movie because of that. What else? What else? Born a Champion. Yeah, so they build this guy up. They put him down. They build this guy up as a real grounded hero, right? He's a war veteran, knows jujitsu. He's a hero, right? He's blind in one eye. He loses his wife, and he's the best jujitsu guy around. So like this guy is Jesus. He's jujitsu Jesus, basically, right? So, but all that's in your face. You know that that's what they're trying to do, which is fine. Like every movie is always trying to sell their characters to the audience, but this movie is not very successful when it comes to doing that at all. Because you can just tell, you can see the strings way too much. You can completely see the strings, and the budget or lack thereof really shows in a lot of scenes. Like that big flashy scene where you saw the stadium, where the arena where they're having the fight. Like you don't see that. That's like one time, like a few seconds, right? So the budget really shows. Yeah. So by the end of this movie, right, or right at the end, after he's won and he ends up being blind, so he's a blind father raising his son, and it ends the same way, documentary style. At the end of the movie, there's literally, I'm not even joking, there's a literal love letter to jiu-jitsu. It says, "Dear Jiu-Jitsu, thank you for teaching me how to roll on the ground with other sweaty men." It doesn't actually say that. I'm paraphrasing, but it says, "Dear Jiu-Jitsu, thank you all from Hoist, Gracie, whatever, Gracie, and a bunch of people, and Sean." This guy, the actor, so he does a good job. You can tell he's no slouch when it comes to jiu-jitsu. He loves jiu-jitsu, and I think that's why this is kind of like a passion project for him. So the letter is, from Sean. He wrote that letter, and on behalf of a bunch of other MMA people, right? Like how jiu-jitsu has changed his life. So this is a passion project. But as I said before, too bad they weren't passionate enough to get a good director or write a good script or make a good movie for the thing they love so much. Because if you love something, hey man, like figure out how to do it justice. So yeah, so it's once again a letter to jiu-jitsu at the end of the movie. Like it's so corny. This movie is so corny. Everything is overshadowed by the fact that it was basically made in a cornfield, right? Yeah, I wasn't expecting much, but I was expecting kind of a hidden gem. But yeah, no, not good at all. But as I said before, I'm a big fan of martial arts, and if you're looking for a good martial arts movie, jiu-jitsu movie, Red Belt by David Mamet. I've never met anybody else who's seen this movie or talks about this movie. It stars Chiwetel Ejiofor, right, the black guy. And yeah, it's an amazing movie, and I'm gonna talk the hell up when I about that movie. I'm going to talk that movie up so much when I do a review about that movie, which I'm going to dedicate a lot of time to make a great video about that movie because it's a really great jujitsu movie, right? It goes into the nitty gritty of jujitsu, and mostly it deals with the biggest challenge of a modern day martial artist because back in the days as a martial artist you use your skills for war, right? That's how you use your skills. And so the biggest challenge of a martial artist today is how do you use your skills except for teaching? How do you truly test your skills? Well, there's UFC now. But it it challenges Chituel Ejiofor, the main character, in ways with things that he can't punch. He cannot punch being poor. He cannot punch trying to find a job. So Red Belt really deals with that, and it's fascinating. It's fascinating, and I'm going to talk about that. Talk about that at some point. And this movie is more like Warrior, and Warrior completely takes a huge diarrhea dump on it. It just cannot hold a candle up to Warrior at all. But anyway, I give this movie a D, barely a D. And if you like martial arts and if you're bored, yeah, check it out. But otherwise, don't waste your time. It's literally a waste of time. But it's very harmless. It's a very harmless movie, which is worse than being provocative or it's worse than being offensive, like offensively bad, or a movie that's so bad it's good. It's harmless. So it's yeah. Check it out if you're bored. Check it out if you're bored. Let me see. I think that's all I got for this. I wrote a bunch of notes, and I hope I covered everything. Whatever. Um. Yeah. Yeah. Born a Champion is whatever. It's completely whatever. Have you seen Born a Champion? If you have seen Born a Champion, let me know what you thought about it. Let's talk jujitsu. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, we live in a society